As a kid, did you ever have a dream car? Like the car you had a poster of on your wall, or the one your neighbor had down the street? Growing up, I had so many I couldn't keep track, so I ended up having goal cars. So instead of just having a McLaren P1 as my dream car, I set up goal cars. And goal cars were basically just, I want to have this car at this point, and then I want to have this car at this point, so on and so forth. And I pretty much had them all. Today, I'm not only going to tell you which dream car I bought, but I'm actually going to tell you the story behind how I actually was able to buy it. So the reason I wanted to make this video is because the number one question I get asked is, how do I afford these toys, these cars, basically anything I make a video about? And inevitably, just like any young creator that has some pretty nice toys, they always comment, "Daddy's money?" So within the past 90 videos, I've actually done quite a few different things to own the toys and the vehicles that I've had, and the explanation for those isn't always so simple. Now, for all this to really make sense, I need to start back from the beginning. So I grew up in a small town in Virginia, and to get your learner's permit there, I believe you're like 15 years old. So the first day I'm able to go take the learner's permit test, I think it was my mamaw that drove me up there to take it, and I failed. And I didn't think I'd need to study. I was like, I know how to drive. Obviously, I'm gonna be able to pass this. And it didn't have anything to do with driving. It was just a test on the computer. So inevitably, I go back home. I think the wait time was about 10 days, and go back, take the test again, finally passed the test after actually studying a little bit. So at the time, my family had a 1998 or 1996 Blazer. I can't remember what year it was. And we also had a 2013 Malibu. Now at this time, it was 2015, almost 2016. And around that same time, probably a couple months after I got my learner's permit, my dad actually ended up trading the Blazer for a Jeep. Now, to give you a time frame, I still had probably at least half a year or so before I actually got my real driver's license, so I had some time to work on the Jeep. Whenever we first got it, it was a 2003 with around 140, 150,000 miles, 4-cylinder, manual, and no AC. It had the soft upper doors. It was a base SE model, but we knew what we could turn it into. So whenever we first got it, it was basic, it was stock, and then by the time I got my driver's license, we turned it into this. Now, I'm sure as many of you guys know, that first vehicle that you have ends up holding a special place in your heart. And for me, that was a 2003 Jeep TJ, like I previously said. Throughout the ownership experience of that, throughout high school, I actually ended up fixing it up quite a bit, got into tons of trouble with it, and broke it every single week. So with that, I ended up picking up a few skills from YouTube, just basically learning how to fix it. And my cousin came down every single weekend, and we basically zip tied, duct taped everything back together. That way it would at least drive, and sometimes we ended up making it better. So that was cool. It was a great learning experience, but it really built a certain amount of pride in being a Jeep owner, the Jeep brand in general. Throughout that, after I'd owned it probably a year and a half, it got up past maybe 160, 150 something thousand miles, and I started having major issues all the time. Now, with that being said, I had been begging my parents to find some way or another to trade the Jeep and get something else. I wanted a fast car, I wanted a cool car. And at the time, it really just wasn't feasible. And give it about 6 months, and we actually ended up getting something really cool. Now, I'm not sure why or even how they did it, but I think it was December of my junior year, my parents actually got me a brand new Camaro. Now with that, it was a 2017 50th anniversary. It was the 4-cylinder turbo, manual transmission, all blacked out. It was a wicked car. Now with that, I was able to hone in on my driving skills on road quite a bit more. Up until that point, the only real driving experience I got to focus on was off-roading, and I did tear it up all the time. The trails were blistered by my TJ, and I had a lot of fun, but with the Camaro, I got to focus on the on-road aspect of driving and got to learn quite a few new ways to drive. Now with that, I ended up falling in love with the Camaro, the 6th gen Camaro, the Alpha chassis, how it handled, how it performed, and how well it responded to minor modifications. So with that, I ended up falling in love with Camaros. Fast forward a little bit more, and I'm at the end of senior year. And with that, most of my friends were planning to go on to play ball or to further their education at college. And for me, that was pretty much just out of the options at that point. I couldn't justify spending the money to just go learn. And at that point, I wasn't going to be able to go play ball at a big enough school that I could justify going to school more. It was just something I absolutely hated, and I didn't want to have to spend the extra money for something I didn't know if I'd honestly finish. So I wanted to go ahead and get a job lined up, a real job. Up until this point, the only real job I had was just working at O'Reilly's Auto Parts. So that next weekend, I went to every dealership in the Tri-Cities area and asked if they had any parts positions available. After a grueling day of getting turned down and everyone saying no, I ended up deciding just to go back home and regroup and figure out what I needed to do. So I go back the next weekend, basically to all the same places, ask again, and expand my search a little bit farther and go to the ones I hadn't really touched on yet. And at that point, all of them were basically just like, no, we're full, we don't have anything for you. We might have some detail positions available, but that really wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I actually go back home and do some more research and find out that sales is actually pretty good for pay. And I figured that was something I may be able to do. So I planned for the next weekend to go out and ask the exact same dealerships if they had any sales positions available. That weekend I went everywhere to all the same dealerships in the area, and basically they just kind of pushed me off. So I had one weekend left, and the next weekend was actually going to be my graduation. So I needed to find something out fast. I changed my approach and my appearance, and I went to all the same dealerships again and actually asked, hey, do you have any sales positions available? I learned that I needed to go straight to the front desk where the sales managers, the general manager was sitting, to actually get their attention. That way I didn't just have to ask the receptionist, hey, do you have any positions available, blah, blah, blah. They just tell you to go online and brush you off. So I go to every dealership and they basically tell me the same thing. We don't need anybody else. You're too young, and this is more of a career than just a job. You're thinking about it wrong. So on my drive home, I decided to stop back by the CDJR store, the Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram store, that I'd already talked to a couple of the people there, and they'd basically told me just to fill something out online. I had a couple weeks prior and I hadn't heard anything back. So I stopped back by that same dealership. I wait at the sales tower for probably 30 minutes while they're continuing to work deals, and I'm just making direct eye contact with the GSM GM. Well, at that point, actually, I walked in and said, hey, do you have any parts positions, any sales positions? What do you have available? One of the sales managers stepped off the desk and took the time to talk to me. He basically explained the role of a salesperson, what all it would entail, and the responsibilities that come along with it. And by the end of the conversation, he thought that I was capable of actually doing this. He saw that I was going to be committed and I was willing to work for it, and he ended up giving me a chance. So he told me to show up the following Monday. Now that Saturday, Sunday, I believe my graduation was either Friday or Saturday, and then the following Monday was the day he told me to show up at 8:30. So that's exactly what I did. So after I start as a salesperson for Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, I worked for about a month and made the drive from Virginia to Tennessee every day. And then after I got my first check, I just moved out. Once I moved out, I ended up taking over all my bills, like the Camaro. My Camaro payment was $450. I got my own insurance, I paid for my rent, all that crazy stuff, and basically just learned how to pay for your own stuff. And that was tough. That was really difficult, and it was hard to manage money because in sales, you don't have a consistent pay to go off of. So some months you may make $2,000, and then the next month you can make $10,000. You never know what you're gonna make, but on your big months, you can't just spend it all because you have to prepare for next month because you may only make $5,000 or $2,000. You never really know. So that was hard to adjust to, and all at the same time learning how to take on all your own responsibilities. So fast forward a bit, I end up learning the ins and the outs of the business. I get really hooked on the actual sales side of it, and I'm always into cars, so this just made it even more of a love and a passion for cars. I learned how to trade and sell them. I ended up trading and selling my own, and I went through so many. So by the time I was 19, I actually convinced my dad to co-sign with me on a $65,000 Power Wagon. And credit-wise, that helped me get a good start. I'd already had the Camaro in my name. I'd had a JK Rubicon in my name, a Rubicon X, fixed it up, But for this $65,000 Power Wagon, they weren't going to give me the money on my own, even though my income definitely qualified for it. So I bought the Power Wagon. Like I said, it was 65 grand. And I thought that was my dream truck. It was everything I could ask for. The Gladiators were supposed to come out within the near future of that time. So in my opinion, it was just a beefed up Gladiator, front and rear lockers, 6.4 liter Hemi, and it looked awesome. Now in that same time frame, I ended up trading and selling a bunch of cars, and here are some of them so you guys can see. Now after I had the Power Wagon for probably 3 months, 4 months, and put about 4,000 miles on it, we ended up getting a Rubicon in the JL in Stingray, 3.6 liter with the new 8-speed transmission, and I saw it pull up on the truck and I just fell in love. Now I ended up deciding to trade that Power Wagon in to get a Rubicon in Stingray with the 3.6, and I definitely lost some money on that Power Wagon. I think it was somewhere around 10 grand, but I gave myself obviously a little discount on the Jeep and was able to get out of that not too bad, but still own a little bit more on the Jeep than I should. But then I really fell in love because the Jeep was supposed to be my dream vehicle. It was the top of the line. Now it was a base Rubicon, but it was the top of the line model, at least for what Jeep had to offer at the time, and I decked it out. Now, throughout the progression of being there for a few years, being able to take on quite a few different roles, quite a few different responsibilities, I inevitably just ended up getting tired of the job in general and wanted to do something new, expand my reach a little bit farther, and basically just get some more experience in something new in a new position. That way I'd be able to move up fast. At that point I had decided some of the things I wanted to do, and at the time it seemed like the only option was basically to move out farther away and basically try to tackle something new. So that same GSM that actually decided to take a chance on me had moved out to the Nashville area to an import store and basically offered me a position as a floor manager. So around Christmas time of 2020, I ended up moving out of the area to the Nashville area to be a floor manager for a new import store. I was basically king of the domestic market at that point. I knew pretty much everything you could imagine sales-wise on any of the cars and any of the competitors, and I'd basically established myself as one of the better Jeep salesperson probably in the entire area. And it was a big reach to decide to jump away from that, from something I had really adopted well and pretty much dominated in our area. So I make this jump, go up to the Nashville area. I work at this job as the floor manager for maybe 2 months, and I pretty much just hate it. And within that same time, that store ended up going under new ownership. We didn't go together well at all. So he brings me in one day and says, hey, you're basically just going to be a salesperson. Here's your new pay plan, no salary, sign here. So I didn't act upset or anything, but instantly I basically just looked up jobs in the area, and I ended up coming across a job for Dealer Services International. Now what they do is basically they use the 4-wheel parts off-road build sites in their areas and help new car dealerships and used car dealerships build crazy builds. If you want to go over a 6-inch lift, if you want to do massive wheels and tires, whatever the case may be, and we were still able to keep their manufacturer warranty on, and that was a really big appeal. Now I applied for this job and didn't hear anything back for quite a while. So what I actually ended up doing was finding out that Polaris Industries owned Dealer Services International. It was a branch off of them. So I get in contact with the owner of Polaris Industries through Instagram and say, hey, I sent in an application, haven't heard anything back. To my surprise, he responded. And within 2 weeks, I was sent down to Atlanta for training on this new job. Now, my role for Dealer Services International was district sales manager. So I covered the entire state of Tennessee and used the 4-wheel parts off-road stores in Nashville as well as Memphis as my build sites. Now, around that same time, it became very tough to even find new cars. The whole coronavirus thing was going on, the shortage on everything was going on, and at that time, to find a 4-wheel drive vehicle on a lot just sitting there was hard to do. So my whole job basically relied on walking into a dealership saying, hey, you've got 5 Jeep Wranglers there, let me take one, add $8,000 to what you own it for, and you can sell it for $16,000 more than what you have it listed for. and it'll come with all the same factory warranties. Same thing for Ford, Chevy, anything you can imagine, Nissan, Toyota, and that was basically my job. Now, at the same time I'm down in Atlanta for training, this is my first week of this new job that I just got. My girlfriend actually calls me and says that she had went to the doctor, she was feeling sick, and found out she's pregnant. So I just left the career that I'd basically established myself in, had went into uncharted territory, and around that same time, all the new cars disappeared. So there really wasn't much of anything for me to fix up for these dealerships. There weren't any Jeeps on the lot, any 4Runners on the lot, Tacomas, 2500s, 1500s. There was nothing anywhere. So I come back, I do this job for about 3 months, try to really establish myself in the market, and the new car shortage was just so aggressive that there really wasn't anything I could do to make more than my actual salary. And I was really gonna have to rely on mostly that commission to be able to do the things I wanted. So at that time, in a little bit of a panic, what I decided to do is sell my Rubicon that I'd fixed up at that point, and also sell my Audi that I'd bought, an Audi A3, and buy a Passat. Now, at that same time, I was like, I need to get a baby-oriented vehicle. That way, girlfriend and baby can ride around in it whenever baby does come. So I ended up getting a Jaguar F-Type supercharged, which was a nice SUV. It was pretty cool. I ended up fixing it up quite a bit. But inevitably, the job with DSI, I just couldn't imagine it working, so I started to think about getting back into the car business. Strangely enough, around the same time, that same store I just left actually came under new ownership again, and the GM, a guy I had previously worked with at that store, took over and just randomly called and said, hey, would you be willing to take the finance manager position at this import store? It basically seemed like a miracle. Obviously the pay would be somewhere around double what I was getting paid at DSI, but it was a whole new thing to learn, so that was definitely going to be a big obstacle. But I was definitely confident in my sales ability and my basic understanding of the process and all the terminology that's really needed and involved in the car business. So I was confident enough in it and ended up taking that job. So after doing that for a little while, of course, ran through a couple more cars. I would say maybe around 6 months in, we're getting close to baby, and my old GM from CDJR store calls me and says, hey, your Jeep is here, it's coming in. That was a shock. That was a massive shock. The owner that owned all 60 stores for the auto group I worked at before had actually changed my order and got his in first. He ended up getting a white Rubicon 392, but lo and behold, this Rubicon 392 had actually come in. Now at that time, I had been a little bit more established as a finance manager, and whenever I'd ordered this thing, it was like a year and a half before, and I ordered it all zeros. It didn't have a price associated with it or anything like that, so I never knew how much it was really going to be. Whenever it basically landed, it ended up being right around $80,000 for the sticker price, and that was a lot. It was going to be more than what I'd ever bought before. So I called the bank. They basically say, hey, you're going to have to come up with some money down to get this. So I had sold the Jeep, I had sold the Audi, I had some extra money left over from it, I had the new job and was making some good income, so I was basically willing to spend some of that savings money I had to get this thing. But that wasn't the only catch. I had to trade both of my 2017 Jaguars, supercharged V6 Jaguars, to be able to get it. Now I still had a Passat at the time as well, but we were getting really close to baby, and obviously that's not something I wanted her to drive. So I basically said, hey, I'm gonna get this, you can drive it, I'll drive the Passat, and then we'll figure it out. So I get all the finances straight, I end up trading both cars. The GM helped me out, let me buy it for the original sticker price. So I got a great deal on the car, and it was easy to justify because if I got in a bad situation, I knew that I could definitely sell it, get rid of it, and get my money back out of it, probably even make money. So it was a win-win scenario, and I was really going to be able to focus on my YouTube. Now, I had made some YouTube videos whenever I worked at the CDJR store, but they were basically more of just like reviews to show my customers. During the whole COVID thing, there were limitations on a certain amount of people you could have in the showroom. Not as many people wanted to come in. And I still had a core group of customers that I really just wanted to keep up to date with all of our stuff. So I posted a few videos and they did well, but it wasn't what I was interested in, just the normal review stuff. So my initial plan was I'll buy this, and I'll be able to actually make a channel off of it. I did make a video on this whenever I first ordered it. I was actually the first order in the entire nation, and if you go back, you can find that video. But at the time, whenever I ordered it, I had no clue if I was gonna be able to buy it or not whenever it actually came in. I just knew I was gonna try to do whatever it took, that way I could buy it. So now, about a year and a half into that position as a finance manager, obviously I'm a little bit more established. I've had some more toys, some more vehicles. Totaled a Camaro at work, had to trade my Can-Am so I could buy it. There's been a bunch of stuff happen on this channel, and you guys have really got to see it since this Rubicon 392's come in, and a lot of you have just been left to think, how in the world is this kid doing this? I know it's very confusing and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but hopefully this little story can give you guys a good reference from where I started, where I'm at, and obviously if you watch the channel, you know where I plan to go. All in all, it's pretty funny the way things worked out. At the time, every single move, every single new journey seemed so stressful. If everything didn't happen at the time it did, nothing would be the way that it is now. And I couldn't be more grateful for the timing on everything. Everything down to the move to Nashville, to the Jeep coming in later than when it was supposed to come in. If it hadn't come in later, I wouldn't have been able to actually purchase the vehicle and buy it. Just the way that everything's come together, it all seems like it points to a specific purpose, a specific reason, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. I can't take all the credit for actually getting this thing, for everything I've done up until this point. I've had a lot of help throughout the way, and especially a lot of help from God. If you would have told me at 18 that I was going to be doing the things I'm doing now, and even trying to grow a YouTube channel, I wouldn't have even known what to think about that. But God keeps presenting certain opportunities in front of me and gives me the bravery and courage to basically face them full speed. And that's really been the biggest difference in what I can see in my life compared to a lot of the people around me. And that gives me a certain competitive advantage to do things that most people really don't think is possible. So with that being said, I hope this serves as at least motivation to some people that continue to ask, hey, how does this kid have this stuff? It's been a long few years since I've graduated high school. I've done quite a few things, and I've really been able to establish myself in the automotive industry and the car business in general. So that's given me the ability to have quite a few cool things. And I hope you guys really enjoyed the cool things that I bring to the channel. And I hope this gives you more of an understanding of how they're brought to the channel. And it's only going to get more fun and more exciting from here. So to wrap it all up, I've had quite a few cars, quite a few toys, but I've put in a lot more work to get these things than what you guys get to see. Since the day I graduated, I've worked 10, 12, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, every single week, just to be able to have these things, because it really is my dream to have all of these. I wasn't interested in going to school for 4 years and then working for a couple years to finally be in the position to where I could get some of the things I wanted. I wanted them as fast as I could get them, because really and truly that's my obsession. It may be a bit of a sick obsession at this point, but I love the cars. I love everything I can do with cars, fix them up, and that's just my true passion. Now with YouTube, obviously we've grown the channel a little bit more, but it's still not even enough to cover, a quarter of the payment on this thing. YouTube's not paying me enough to do this stuff. I just spend my money from work to do this stuff, and hopefully one day we can grow it into something that really provides for itself, and I can bring you guys a lot better content. But for now, we've got what we got, and we're making do with it. And hopefully a lot of you guys are enjoying the stuff that I'm bringing to this channel. If y'all haven't already, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. I promise you won't want to miss the things that are coming to this thing in the very, very near future. If you guys like this kind of stuff, I know it's much more different than the normal videos we do, but let me know. I just don't think that's content that's going to do very well, but I think it's at least needed. That way you guys have a point of reference to understand where I'm coming from and where these things come from in general. But that's going to wrap it up for today, and until next time, Godspeed.